Hey guys, today I'll show you a horror thriller film named Lowlifes. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. The movie begins with a family of 4 on an RV road trip encountering 2 young hunters, Billy and Vern, whose car had broken down while looking for Billy's missing brother, leaving them stranded. The 2 men asked the family for help. After some consideration, the family allowed Billy to ride with them. Billy shared that his family had lived in this remote, desolate area for 3 generations over the past 80 years. However, due to the dwindling population, only a few family members remained, including an uncle who lived in a standalone house along the route to town. Billy proposed that if they dropped him off at his uncle's house, his uncle could drive back to pick up Vern. The RV owner, Keith, casually suggested playing a guessing game with Billy, but Billy unexpectedly turned the tables and grabbed a small notebook from him. As Billy flipped through the notebook, he noticed something strange. The handwriting was identical to that of his missing brother. Billy, unaware of the truth, didn't realize that his brother had been killed the night before by none other than this family in the RV. Not only had they killed him, but they had also butchered the body and turned it into a delicious chicken roast. Billy failed to sense the danger looming over him. While he was still puzzled over the notebook, death came swiftly. Jeffrey, Keith's son, drove 2 knives into Billy's neck with brutal precision. His cold, ruthless actions were bone and butt chilling, but his family remained calm, clearly accustomed to such events. Afterward, Jeffrey held 2 knives and swiftly stabbed the man in the neck. Once the man was unquestionably dead, the family expertly began their assembly line operation. The father took charge of dismembering the corpse, while the mother, along with their 2 children, chopped the remains into small onion pieces and placed them in the freezer for storage. Night fell. In a house in the countryside, Billy's uncle was having dinner with his 2 daughters, Julie and Savannah. Not long after, there was a knock at the door. It was Jeffrey's family. They introduced themselves and claimed their car had broken down, saying Billy had told them to seek help at the uncle's house. Julie, unsuspecting, kindly let the family in. To sabotage the house's communication equipment, Keith pretended to need to call a car repair service. However, he was told that the family's only 2 phones had been taken by Billy and Vern. The hospitable uncle invited the family to join them for dinner, but the RV family showed little interest in the food. Suspicious, Savannah asked why Billy would send them on foot instead of driving them here himself. Keith choked on his drink, but was saved by his wife, Kathleen, who quickly came up with a plausible excuse. Despite her efforts, Savannah still felt something was off. The tense atmosphere was broken by heavy footsteps. Julie announced that they had another guest. It's her boyfriend, Big Mac, who is working as a factory worker, a job fit for his big muscles. Moments later, a burly man carrying a sledgehammer entered the room. Jeffrey's mind was already racing with 100 different ways to cook the man. However, due to Big Mac's intimidating presence, the family refrained from making any rash moves, temporarily stowing their knives. Jeffrey even handed Big Mac a chocolate bar as a gesture of goodwill. Meanwhile, Vern, still waiting for help, anxiously tried to call Billy, unaware that his friend had been killed and his phone smashed by Keith. After dinner, the uncle asked Savannah to play the piano for everyone. During her performance, Amy, Jeffrey's sister, couldn't hide the admiration or lust in her eyes for Savannah. After the musical interlude, the RV family was assigned their rooms for the night. Amy was placed in Savannah's room, and upon learning that Savannah disliked men, Amy couldn't suppress her delight. In another room, Keith and Kathleen were discussing their plan. It was revealed that the chocolate bar given to Big Mac was laced with poison potent enough to fell an ox. Taking out Big Mac would be no issue, even though his muscles are big. However, Savannah's piano performance had softened Kathleen's resolve. She began questioning whether they could truly destroy a family with dreams and aspirations. Sensing her wavering, Keith began to manipulate her, insisting that these people were lowly creatures, unworthy of life and incapable of having dreams. After calming his wife, Keith approached Jeffrey, instructing him to wait patiently for the right moment and not to act impulsively. Meanwhile, in Savannah's room, the air was filled with the faint scent of lilies. Amy, taking the hormone initiative, removed her smelly jacket to reveal her slender waist and sat on the bed. She told Savannah not to be nervous. They can just pretend they're college roommates sharing a bed. But it was clear that whatever would happen next after they both climbed into bed wasn't going to follow any innocent roommate script. Elsewhere, the chocolate's poison began taking effect. Big Mac was hit with severe nausea and an urgent need for a bathroom. However, the only toilet in the house was occupied by Julie, who was vomiting uncontrollably, likely having been poisoned by eating Big Mac's chocolate. Left with no other option, Big Mac stumbled outside to relieve himself, but he didn't make it far before succumbing to the same violent vomiting as Julie. Hearing the commotion from the bathroom, Jeffrey took matters into his own hands and began his hunt. Big Mac, caught off guard, was slashed in the leg by Jeffrey. However, the sheer strength of the massive man allowed him to fight back, quickly overpowering Jeffrey and throwing him to the ground like a little Barbie toy. The kind-hearted Big Mac tried to help him up, not realizing how dangerous Jeffrey was, but his kindness was repaid with sharp, calculated stabs. Jeffrey, using cunning and agility, struck again and again, finally slashing Big Mac's big throat while he was weakened by another wave of violent vomiting. Meanwhile, Keith wasn't idle. Armed with an axe, he snuck into a nearby bedroom only to be ruthlessly struck down by the elderly occupant, still half dreaming. Seeing his son's brutal success in killing Big Mac, Keith was filled with pride. As a reward, he secretly brought out a bag of raw snacks for Jeffrey, who loved eating raw meat. Back in Savannah's room, the atmosphere grew more charged. Amy, now entwined with Savannah, stealthily pulled out a knife ready to strike. However, at the critical moment, Savannah suddenly had second thoughts and sat up abruptly. She pushed Amy's sexy body off of her, causing Amy to lose balance and accidentally impale herself on the knife. Amy quickly made up an excuse, claiming she carried the knife for self-defense. Savannah, oblivious to the truth, expressed concern for Amy's injury. Still unwilling to give up, Amy pulled out the now bloodied knife to continue her attack, but she was caught off guard when Savannah, out of nowhere, planted a fierce kiss on her forehead. Stunned, Amy was momentarily immobilized. Savannah then went to the storage room to fetch a first aid kit, but was distracted by a sound outside. Looking out the window, she saw the RV parked on the road. They had claimed to arrive on foot, so why was their vehicle there? Keith and Kathleen had exited the RV. Spotting blood on her husband's wrist, Kathleen licked it clean, a gesture that thrilled her. Keith smugly remarked that the remaining people in the house were insignificant and that they were about to stock up on enough meat to last a month. Hearing their conversation, Savannah finally realized the sinister nature of Keith's family. After they left, she hurried to the RV to investigate. There, she found Billy's hat and her cousin's decapitated head. Meanwhile, Julie, still nauseous, was near collapse. As she fought to stay conscious, she stumbled upon a plastic bag containing severed eyeballs, nearly scaring her to death. Summoning the last of her strength, she searched for her father, only to find his bloodied corpse on the bed. Screaming in terror, she was grabbed and silenced by Keith, who dragged her back to the house. The Keith family had an unwritten rule. During a hunt, every family member must claim a kill. Keith assigned Julie to Kathleen, even knocking Julie unconscious to make it easier for her to act. Kathleen hesitated, and when Jeffrey intervened to suggest sending Savannah back to her room, Keith refused. He and Jeffrey wanted to see how Kathleen would carry out her kill. At this point, it became clear that Kathleen was the most normal member of the family. However, her fatal flaw was her blind devotion to her husband. With just a few manipulative words, Keith could bend her to his will. As Kathleen prepared to act, an unexpected turn of events occurred. An arrow flew through the window, piercing her neck. The shadow of a figure flashed outside. It was Savannah. Amy, seeing her mother's lifeless body, was consumed with rage. After calming down, she turned her anger on Keith, blaming him for the events that led to her mother's death. Jeffrey also blamed Amy, saying if she had killed Savannah earlier, their mother would still be alive. The two siblings began to wrestle their muscles, and Keith ordered them to stop, urging Unity to avenge Kathleen. Meanwhile, Julie regained consciousness and tried to crawl away, but the family wasn't about to let her go. The cold-blooded Keith broke her fingers, causing her to scream in pain and inadvertently alert Savannah to her location. Jeffrey, now searching room by room, got closer to her. In a desperate bid to save her sister, Savannah climbed back into the house through a window and found Amy's phone. She quickly called the police, but the signal was weak and the call was cut off. The situation grew more dangerous. Fortunately, Savannah attacked Jeffrey first, catching him off guard. As the hunt dragged on, Keith grew impatient. He threatened Savannah, saying if she didn't appear within 30 seconds, Julie would die. Halfway through the countdown, Savannah emerged to flex her body, dragging a wounded Jeffrey into the living room. Both sides now had hostages, creating a tense standoff. After some negotiation, Amy persuaded Savannah to release her hostage first. But Savannah didn't anticipate that the family would betray her. Not only was she unable to save her sister, but she also ended up sacrificing herself. It was time for a midnight snack. Keith, humming a cheerful tune, prepared his special roast meat. No one could tell if the meat was from Big Mac or the elderly victim, until Keith brought out a severed hand with fingers tattooed with Big Mac's name, solving the mystery. Keith took a bite of the roast meat and in his twisted way demanded Savannah try some as well. When she refused, he cruelly chopped off Julie's finger, chewed on it, and swallowed it. Not stopping there, Keith turned his sinister intentions toward Savannah. He threatened to chop off her hands so she could never play the piano again. At this critical moment, Savannah cleverly exposed a secret. Amy was attracted to women. Keith, being both highly traditional and controlling, couldn't handle this revelation. Even worse for him, he couldn't accept that Amy had hidden it from her all this time. Father and daughter descended into a heated argument, trading accusations. Seizing the opportunity, Savannah freed her hands from the rope. In a flash, she grabbed the fork Keith had used for eating roast meat and stabbed it into his left eye. Screaming in pain, Keith pulled out the fork, taking his eyeball with it. Shockingly, he even ate his own eyeball, showcasing a level of depravity beyond imagination. Meanwhile, Amy and Savannah were locked in a brutal fight. Just then, Vern, who had actually walked back, arrived to flash his gun and fired a shot confidently. Unfortunately, it missed everyone. He then aimed the gun at Keith, tipping the balance in his favor. But Vern hesitated at a critical moment. When Jeffrey appeared, he immediately turned his gun on him but failed to pull the trigger. This hesitation gave Keith an opening to strike. Using a flower vase as a weapon, Keith ambushed Vern, and the two wrestled their muscles rather than tongues. In the chaos, Vern's shotgun fell to the ground. Elsewhere, Savannah managed to knock Amy unconscious and lured Jeffrey into the kitchen. Meanwhile, the fight between Keith and Vern intensified. After a few minutes, Keith grabbed a knife from the ground and plunged it into Vern's tofu head. Simultaneously, Savannah successfully turned the tables on Jeffrey, sending him to serve Satan. Keith, lying on the floor, breathed a sigh of relief, unaware that Julie had freed herself from her restraints. Without hesitation, she picked up an axe and struck down her father's murderer, avenging their family. The two sisters, thinking the nightmare was over, let their guard down and began talking. However, they overlooked one critical fact. Amy wasn't dead. She was merely unconscious. The worst-case scenario unfolded as Amy woke up, pulled the knife out of Vern's body, and stabbed the defenseless Julie to death. Now, only two remained alive in the room, Savannah and Amy. Each grieving their losses, both were determined to kill the other. Their fight raged on, moving from inside the house to the outside. For a moment, it seemed Savannah had the upper hand and might finally take down her enemy. But then, an ironic twist of fate occurred. Since Savannah had called the police earlier, the police finally arrived. However, they made a fatal mistake. Seeing Savannah chasing Amy with a hammer, they instinctively assumed she was the perpetrator. Without hesitation, they shot and killed Savannah. Amy, ever the manipulator, transformed into the victim in the eyes of the police, receiving their care and protection. As the police reported the situation to their superiors, they noticed the RV parked by the side of the road. On their way to investigate, Amy struck again, killing the officers. In the story's grim conclusion, Amy set fire to Savannah's family home, watching it burn as she drove away in the RV. Under the cover of darkness, she disappeared into the night. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.